Casa 2.0 is wild. It built this full stack fitness tracking app in minutes, and I was convinced it was bug-free. Then I ran it through this TestSprite MCP, and it quietly uncovered issues I didn't even see coming. Do you know you could be making a huge mistake by trusting AI-generated code for production? I've also been making this mistake. When I pushed Casa 2.0 to its limits by building this app from scratch, it ran perfectly, or I thought so, but it did not get everything right. Casa delivered, of course, a beautiful UI. The app architecture was right, and the logic was okay. But let me show you what I uncovered after running the code review using this AI testing MCP I recently discovered, TestSprite MCP. I'll show you what it does and how you can start using it to test your AI-generated code. But first, let me show you a quick summary of this project and how I used Casa to build it. Let's get started. You begin by logging into your account, and you can create an account by registering here. And once logged in, you now access the dashboard. This is the dashboard, and on this dashboard, we have 3 widgets that display the total workouts, the current streak, and the total volume. You can also view the history over the last 30 days and the number of exercises per week, as well as the distribution of exercise types. We have other pages such as the log workout page, where you can add new workouts and exercises. You can also edit, delete, and update the logs. We also have the workout history feature, where you can view the previous workouts and sort them. Finally, we have the progress tracking page, where you track your weight progression over time and with various exercises. This app was built using Casa 2.0 in one shot, and as you're going to see, it took just a few minutes. I used multiple agents, and surprisingly, I didn't even require the built-in Casa model composer. Let me show you how I built this and how I used tests to catch bugs before I move this code to production. So to get started with this building, I'll place my prompt in the prompt input box. As you can see, this is a complex prompt that I wrote to create a Next.js app with the app router. I'm calling it FitTrack Pro. This prompt includes Tailwind CSS for styling, a separate package folder for Next.js, and all the instructions that I need, like setting up the database and the basic folder structure. The project structure is going to be a simple Next.js app, and the prompt for this will be available in the description below. If you'd like to build this kind of an app, you can grab it from there. For us to get this done, we're going to use the Casa agent mode, and we'll set this to auto since we're using the free version. I'm not going to add any context since this is a single build, and I'll just click on the go button and Casa will begin coding. Immediately after I click the button, Casa begins building this app by creating a to-do list. It quickly starts creating the package.json, as you can see it right here. Then it creates the TS config file, Tailwind config file, and all the files keep coming one after another. My strategy is to just observe as Casa builds this app and confirm that all the files are okay at the end of the build. And it's been barely a minute since we started, and as you can see in the bottom, there is this context tracking indicator that keeps tracking the context we've used so far. Remember, we are on the free plan. Within minutes, we can now open the completed fitness tracking app. This is the dashboard, and as you can see, Casa is still building some pages, and we are ready to launch it soon. This is the front end, and it's quickly building up the kind of things that we might have missed out on. I'm now going to add a new prompt on the same agent. Can we add some nice icon and visuals that will make the app more lively? Casa begins adding these icons. Of course, it goes for the Lucid React library for the icons. It imports and adds the code. Once we refresh, we can see these icons are working and the UI is looking beautiful. On the dashboard, it also added the respective icons to the dashboard widgets. Now it's time to move to the next feature, which is multi-agent feature. This feature allows you to run multiple agents, up to 8 agents simultaneously. I'll begin by clicking on New Agent button, then I give it a prompt. I would like to check if my app is mobile responsive. This agent is going to check if my app is mobile responsive, and it's working fine. So we just added a new agent for testing our mobile responsiveness. You can keep adding agents up to 8 agents. We can add a new agent by clicking on the New Agent button and give it a prompt like, I would like us to start testing the backend. Then you can ask a simple question like, give me the guidelines. It begins creating a to-do list, a comprehensive testing guideline for me, and it builds up those test guidelines, and it helped me test this app. Building with Casa is easy, but getting the app to work in production is where the task begins. That's why I found this TestSprite MCP that we're going to use to help us test the code for production. I discovered TestSprite MCP as one of the best AI coding platforms, and it's quite impressive. I initially came across it on Product Hunt, where I frequently check out the latest AI products, and as you can see, it's a solid product with some good ratings. Currently, it's at 4.4 stars, and it has received different kinds of badges, which tells you it's a good product. To get started, head over to testsprite.com and create your account. The pricing is decent, and the free tier with 150 credits per month gets you started easily. There are other packages like the starter package as well as the other options. I'm going to start with the free version. I'll sign up and create the account. They have the nice documentation that allows you to quickly install this MCP. Once you've installed the MCP, in the dashboard, you're going to see where to create the API key. I have 150 credits remaining as I start to test. I'm going to test this up manually first before we test with TestSprite. Setting up TestSprite MCP is straightforward. I'm now logged in on my TestSprite dashboard, and as you can see this option, Test Locally. You click on this Test Locally MCP option, and then you can see the option to create the API key. You can install it on Casa, Cloud Code, or other IDEs. If you click on one-click install, it's going to prompt you to open it in Casa. Currently, my Casa AI is running. It's building the app. Once I click on open, it loads up the settings page, and I can now install the MCP server on Casa. Under my Casa settings, you can see I can click on this to install the TestSprite MCP. And as you can see now, it's loading the tools. For this to work, the MCP icon should be green. You can always check the documentation for this setup on TestSprite website, which I found to be detailed and easy to use. My MCP has been installed, but we have a problem. You can see it's not loading. It's because it's missing an API key. You can see it shows an error. So to fix this error, you can check the log and you can see it says server not found. We just need to add the TestSprite API key, which will enable us to connect TestSprite dashboard to Casa for testing. So head over to TestSprite dashboard and navigate to the billing section. Click on the button to create a new API key. Give it a name. In my case, I'll just give it a name, Casa Testing. Then I just click on the API key to create the key. And always remember, this API key should be kept in a safe place and you should never share it with someone. I'll copy my key and add it to the JSON file in the Casa settings where the MCP code exists. Once I add the key, it's going to connect to TestSprite and I'm going to be able to run the test. Once I refresh again, as you can see, TestSprite MCP is now working, green. I can see different kinds of tools that are available on this MCP, which include Bootstrap Test, Code Summary, Standardized PRD, Front-End Test Plan, Back-End Test Plan, Code and Generate Test, and so on and so forth. These tools are going to help us to extensively test this code against the standard and make sure we catch all the bugs before production. Next, we're going to test this app manually first before we can come back to TestSprite. I head over to my terminal and I just open the front-end folder. In the front-end folder, I want to run the front-end by just npm run dev. The app is loading and it's loading on the port 3000. Remember, this port is very important once you are testing with TestSprite. Both the backend and the front-end ports are needed and they must be running for this to work. So I'm going to create an account, log in, test the routes, and see if everything is working. So I create an account. Let's go with John Doe or John Doe at example. Then I click on register and apparently it fails. The reason it fails is we have not yet loaded the backend. If you remember, the Node.js server is not running. So we need to open a new tab, then move to the backend folder and run npm start Node.js server. Now that the server is running and you note it's running on port 4000, we can now head back to the registration. And once we register, we're going to be logged in successfully. Inside our dashboard, you can see these beautiful icons we added earlier. We have the graphs and we have everything, including the logout page where we can add workouts, pick a date and add an exercise. We have the total volume displayed here, the type of exercise, which is bench press. We have the history section, and you can check out all these cool features that includes adding, editing, and deleting or canceling or the workouts, or the crude create, read, update, and delete operations that are needed for this app to work. So let me just now log out. We now want to move to TestSprite and run our test for the AI-generated code to catch the bugs before production. Set up the MCP if you have not set it up. Go to Preferences, then pick on Casa Settings and set up the MCP as I mentioned earlier. Before you begin testing with TestSprite, 3 things need to work. The front end must be learning and you need to ensure that you note the port. In my case, it's running at port 3000. The backend must also be running. You have to ensure the backend is running and you pick the port. In my case, it's 4000. Then you need a PRD document prepared, a product requirements document that will upload to help with our testing. Once all these are running, it's time for us to now start testing with TestSprite MCP. Head over to Cursor Agent mode. We just type in the prompt, can you test this project with TestSprite? It begins creating the test, and as you can see, it's going to ask you for permissions. We have different kinds of permissions that you can run, but I'll choose to allow one at a time. The test begins to run. After running this test, TestSprite configuration mode comes up. We need to give it specific details that are needed for testing the front end and the back end. For the front end, it requires the login credentials. We are going to fill in the path for the local development where we are testing, give it the PRD document, and it's going to begin the test. So here, I'm going to put in the name, the username, then we'll put in my password. Then I'm going to set this port to 3000 and copy the URL here. Then upload my PRD document. I have prepared this PRD document and it's under my root of the project folder. We have this PRD document, which is a detailed document about my app, how it works and the features. So I'm just going to click on upload that and we have it completely filled. Then we have the front end ready. It's time to confirm everything is okay. The name, the password, the route, and the PRD document uploaded. Then we just click on run. Then we need to configure the backend. It's going to ask us to fill these similar details, but we don't need the authentication since we're using this API. We fill in the scope, we select the scope, then we leave this as no authentication required since it doesn't need to. Then we fill in the port, ensure the backend is running. So this will bring up the terminal here and we copy the URL back and the path is now set. Now we are going to upload the PRD. If you have a different one, you can upload it here. But since we're using one, we're just going to use one. So I delete this one. Now it's time for us to run the test. I begin running the test one after another. And you can see it starts creating some folders, some files. I keep clicking allow and run commands. But you can see these commands can also run together. So I can choose run everything to run all the commands. But you need to be cautious of this since there is potential for prompt injection, as you can see this notice. But for now, I just need to run the test and demonstrate how this works. So I click on continue and this goes on. It's generating the tests and writing the files on the main project folder. Finally, we've completed the test and I can see we've generated different kinds of test results. 8 failed critical issues have been found and we can see them here. The positive number validation problem, set creation weight calculation logic incorrect, email format validation missing, required attributes missing, negative value accepted in workout form, submit button renders issues, edit workout response, and so on and so forth. Then I can see one of the most critical issues in the dashboard. The dashboard endpoint does not require a JSON Web Token authentication, which allows unauthorized users to access. That's a critical error that TestSprite has caught before we sent this code to production. I can see these test results by opening the file in edit mode, where I can have a close look at the results and understand each of these tests. So we can click one at a time to read the result and find out about the tests. We can also check this main test report, which is a markdown file that gives us a general overview of what the tests are and what has happened to each of these tests. This is the TestSprite AI testing report, MCP. It gives you a detailed test about the project, gives the info about the project and each test. Something I like about it is the detail or the layout. It gives us the test name, the code, the test visualization result, the status, which can be failed or successful, the test analysis, which I find very useful, which gives a detailed description of what has been found, the issue identified, the impact, and of course, the recommendation. This is something I've come to like about TestSprite. It's very useful when I'm preparing the code for production. So I'm going to go through all these tests and then ask Cursor to correct them. I'll go back and forth correcting these tests and Cursor will help me until I'm satisfied and everything is ready for production. Once everything is ready for production, it's going to give me a green light like this is ready for production. Finally, we now need to head back to TestSprite dashboard to see where our tests have been logged. Since we are using the MCP, you'll find the test here under MCP tests. You can review the test and see the test results. And you can also see my credits have reduced by 10 since I started at 150 and now I have 140 credits. To test the front end of our project using TestSprite, we need to use the browser agent on Cursor along with the TestSprite MCP. Our app front end has several features that we would like to see work and test them with TestSprite MCP. Let's open a new agent on Cursor and use this prompt. Can you help me test this front end? You see I use the @ symbol to reference the front end to give the prompt context with TestSprite and the browser agent. Immediately, Cursor explores the project and generates this comprehensive testing to-do list that is going to follow. Then it opens up this browser window to load the TestSprite MCP configuration setup. On this configuration setup, you're supposed to select the front end, then select the second option as the code base. You fill in the details that include the account details. I fill in my email and my password. For the local development port, we leave it to 3000. Then fill in the path to be localhost port 3000, since we are currently running our testing server on port 3000. It's important to remember, before you can use TestSprite MCP, you need to ensure both the backend and the frontend servers are running. I'll open the terminal and navigate to the frontend folder, then start running the frontend server. I just do an npm run dev and the server is running. Now I need to move to the backend folder and run the backend server. I navigate to that folder and simply start the server with npm start. We now have both the frontend and the backend servers running. You should note that the server for the frontend is running at port 3000 and the backend server is running at port 4000. These two are important requirements when you're testing with TestSprite, since you need to fill them in the configuration settings. Next, we need to upload the PRD document that we'll use to test our frontend. TestSprite requires you to prepare a PRD document before you can start testing. I'll simply upload my PRD document and you're good to go. Cursor immediately begins analyzing our files and creating the testing criteria that includes a complete testing plan using TestSprite MCP. And after a few minutes, we can see it load built-in browser Cursor agent, where we are ready to start testing and watch TestSprite MCP along with Cursor test the frontend. You can begin to see Cursor agent logging and testing the front-end form and the registration and all the other features. It also provides me, after a few minutes, with this npm command to run the test. And opening up the terminal, you can see one test after another created sequentially. Some tests are successful while others are failing. After a few minutes, it opens the browser automation testing report that includes this detailed report of all the tests that have been run, and you can filter tests by failed tests or successful tests. You can click through each test and open it to see the details that are useful for debugging and come along with screenshots. Let me open one of the tests like this add workout session with multiple exercise validation input. Scrolling in, you can see the details of the test, and at the bottom, you can see the screenshot that shows the results. You can check out other tests. Once you open it, you can see the details of the test and the screenshot at the bottom. Now let's go back to the TestSprite dashboard to see how these tests are logged in the dashboard. On the sidebar menu, you can click on MCP test to open up the test results. For each test result, you'll see the recorded preview of TestSprite agent testing each feature in real time. In this test, you can see it's testing the creation of the account, it fills in the form and the details. And in another test, it's testing the login, and it logs in successfully. You can see the dashboard. You can go ahead to check all these other tests and check the preview to see the tests that have been conducted. The preview gives you an in-depth analysis of what you need to do to change in your code section. You can also view the code section to see any changes that you can make to make your app better. That's how testing frontend works with TestSprite MCP and Cursor. That's how I've been working with Cursor and TestSprite MCP. It helps me pick bugs and make the code ready for production. Check out this other video on the screen that will take this to the next level. Try TestSprite MCP and let me know your thoughts in the comments. Until next time, thank you for your time, and as always, if you enjoyed this video, do not forget to subscribe, and one subscribe gives me one more step forward to bringing you great content. Thank you, and I appreciate it.